Hey everyone, chalk this one up as a win for the side of liberty. Finally, once and for all. Apparently, and I guess, it happened in Alberta, but I was about ready to say, apparently there are some activist judges that are willing to stand up in the face of all the onslaught of opposition and political lobbyist groups, right? And stand up for the law, for the foundational aspects of common law, right? The kind of laws that were brought forth and presented and are supposed to be part of the very justice system that has created the very freedoms and liberties that we in Western civilized so-called democracies have come to appreciate and more or less overlook and just expect that that's how things are done. In reality, we're seeing all the time where there's political opportunists, lobbyist groups, special interest groups, the devious among us, the control freaks, the sociopaths. They're trying all the time to use the mechanisms of government to override and overrule the whole concept of individual liberty and freedoms. And those individual liberties and freedoms, as we all should understand, they don't come from government. Governments are only all these things when you're talking about constitutions or Bill of Rights, like as in Canada's Chartered Bill of Rights. It's just basically written down saying humans are individuals, our freedoms come from God, or for those of you who don't believe in religion, but basically our freedoms are inherent. Just for being born, you're born as a free human being, individual, right? Without any masters or rulers. That's what the basic concept of individual freedom and liberty is all about. But, like I say, there's many, many, many people that you live among that don't like to respect those individual freedoms. And they've been the ones, the squeaky wheels, right? So they've been getting the grease for many decades now, with very little pushback, because the people, like I say, the people that go into these positions, they're not the ones that are affected themselves. So they don't feel the necessary or the need to push back. That's the number one problem that you're going to realize with central planning, governments, judges, lawyers, right? It's all about incentives. And people, I'm sorry, we're human beings. We're all about what's good for us. People like to think, oh, we're supposed to be all sacrifice ourselves for the greater good, or all about altruism. But in reality, every human being is going to, whether they admit it outright or not, but underlying their psychology is, I got to worry about myself first and foremost, right? And that's fine. But then you have to lay down the ground rules, right? When you're going to live with the respect of the individual, then you lay down the ground and the base rules, which were done. That was the era that claimed shortly thereafter, the Enlightenment era, and then all the proper laws that came about that gave all these natural freedoms and rights, which is why all these Western countries took off. Like, look at how fucking fast all these countries grew, to the point where, look at the things, the beneficial aspects of individual liberty and the promotion of such. Look at it. Look at what it created. Now, governments have been trying to constantly picking away at it, right? But there's been so much growth and prosperity throughout so much for so many decades. The people that were creating all that growth and prosperity were like, let these central planner fucks steal a little bit. I'm still benefiting myself and it's still growing. So it's like, but now apparently they're saying that they're carrying the heaviest burden, and they're realizing the writing's on the wall, right? Some judges, the writing's on the wall, and it's like, shit. Yeah, we let things go too far. Now these collectivists, these central planning control freaks pretty much run things. So let's try to push back. And this judge, Alberta Court of Appeal, actually it was 3 judges, and it was a 2-1 decision. So there was a dissenting voice even now, even today. But I've been saying for years, now I'll read the headline here, but I've been saying for years that of course this is completely unconstitutional and unjust. Anyone with an objective brain would know this without a lawyer or a judge having to even tell you this. Just give someone the facts, and if they have an objective brain or critical thinking skills, they'd say, well, of course, it's totally unjust. Anyways, Alberta Court of Appeal strikes down part of drunk driving law. High Court says suspending licenses of accused drivers before trial is unconstitutional. So that's the thing. And of course it is. The whole point of the justice system is innocent until proven guilty. innocent until proven guilty. You're innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. That is the very foundational basis of even the slightest semblance of living in a free society is, of course, you're innocent until someone has proven you guilty in a court of law. And I mean, it has to be, and the standards should be very high. They used to be historically, right? They've been dropped and dropped and dropped. And like I say, that race to the bottom, that's where we're at. But like I said, this judge or these judges are saying, no, we're going to step another rung or two up on that ladder and hold people to account. Personal accountability and personal responsibility is going to be something that we're going to talk about now, and actual legal justice. Now, let me get down. Now, if you're not familiar, before I even read into this article, if you're not familiar, if you're charged with an impaired driving charge, and for those of you who smoke pot, wait till you find out how that's going to come to you too. Because like I say, the push for the legalization of marijuana is that push for now they're going to turn you into the new criminal class. But if you get charged with impaired driving in Canada, even if you refuse because you realize that under Section 8 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom says basically illegal searches and seizure or unreasonable searches or seizure, or even if you go to the pretense of natural law, right? Even that comes subsequent way after even habeas corpus, is that I don't have to offer the state or those who want to criminalize my habits or behaviors or any action that I care to, I don't have to offer any evidence that may incriminate me, right? So there's the presumption of innocence and, the Fifth Amendment, right? More or less, which, well, that's a U.S. thing, but it's in common law, right? So Canada, U.S., the Commonwealth countries, common law has always understood that I don't have to offer those who want to criminalize or penalize me, I don't have to offer them anything that may incriminate me. I have the right to refuse or speak if it offers anything that may incriminate me, right? And that is exactly it. So, right? So whether it's that or the right to travel freely, without the government having any conceptual belief that they have the ability to just stop you at any time and under the suspicion or pretense that you may have committed a criminal offense, right? That's the whole point of freedom, is that you get to travel, and the only way they can fuck you is if you actually have committed a crime. They don't get to pretend that, oh, you may have committed a crime, or I might suspect you may have committed a crime. The only way that they can pretend or put forth any premise that they can, take measures that infringe on your personal rights, your personal individual rights, is if there is clear and concise proof that you have committed an actual crime. And roadside, breathalyzer tests, right? Or, just someone stopping someone because they seen you maybe swerve, or maybe they see your eyes might be bloodshot, or there's no real reasonable grounds for stopping people collectively, everybody, unless, like I say, now if you're falling behind someone and you see someone swerving all over the place, right? And you know the signs and habitual behavior that would be, yeah, that fucking person's drunk, right? Now, one time you might say, okay, maybe they were picking something off the floor or whatever. But, a normal, sensible human being can understand the difference between someone that they would suspect that might be impaired. But you can't just say, let's stop everybody, right? Let's set up a roadside traffic stop and just throw everyone under the bus, and maybe we'll catch a few, right? No, that's collective punishment. That's preemptive punishment without any real suspicion of criminal activity. You know this. I mean, come on. If you're reasonable, if you have critical thinking skills. But let me get into the actual meat of this article, because, like I say, this is very important, and it sets a precedent that hopefully will start to swing the pendulum the other way as far as in terms of justice and individual rights. Hopefully, we're going to head back towards that direction, where people start to understand fundamentally that you have to respect individual rights and genuine justice. You cannot use force, subjugation, and collective mysticism as a means to an end, just to hope that you'll penalize the criminal types among us, but you use that overarching umbrella. In reality, you're actually penalizing people that are actually really good people. You're causing pain, devastation, and destruction. And I mean, just go live with a family that's had to deal with this kind of circumstance, right? And then you'll know personally. It's not just a statistic. Then you'll know with real world knowledge of how dramatically and negatively that can affect not just the person that's being pursued or criminally charged under this pretense and this false assumptions, but even out the extent of their family or their children, or maybe their grandparents or others that are around them, or their community, even as the community. You know, when you take away people's, in my perfect example, you take away a person's ability to sustain an income in a very small community, well, you've actually hurt the whole community as well, right? You've actually hurt the community that you forced me to have to leave. So you didn't benefit society even. So there's not even a pretense of that. The Alberta Court of Appeal has struck down a section of the province's Traffic Safety Act that allows immediate and mandatory suspension for anyone charged with impaired driving. Good for these judges. In a split decision, Alberta's highest court ruled the current law violates the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms because it ignores the presumption of innocence and the right to a fair trial before any punishment is imposed. Exactly. I mean, that's been the very foundational premise and part of our legal or justice system since the very inception is, of course, the presumption of innocence, and you have to wait till someone's been actually convicted in a court of law before any penalty should be imposed, right? Obviously. In the majority 41-page decision, Justice Franz Slater wrote that there are two things that can be said about the administrative license suspension regime. The first is that it is clearly effective, Slater said. The second thing that can be said is that it was designed without any consideration for constitutional values underlying the Canadian legal system. So yeah, the effectiveness, yes, just like you, right? I could prevent, just like if I was raising my kids, right? Or in a community. If I put everyone in my community in jails, I could guarantee, look it, I've prevented crime in my community. So the effectiveness could be proven. That would be a part that would be easily proven, that if we just put everyone in jail, I guarantee there will be zero crime, right? So that would be the correlation, the cause and effect correlation there would be easy to discern. There's no crime, I could prove it, but it's because we're all locked up. But that would mean you've removed any pretense of freedom. So who would want to live in a place where there's no such thing as freedom? Of course, you would, then at that stage, you wouldn't have to worry about any economic growth or any of that stuff, because who would want to live in a place? So once again, the presumption of innocence is it's psychological and not just legal. Of course, you know, these are things, but like I said, these are things that's taken 8 centuries from the very inception of Magna Carta till modern day. This battle has been fought and there's been push from both sides for so long. But I mean, after the Enlightenment era, we were kind of on the right track, but the central planners, the control freaks, the authoritarian among us, like I said, the goalpost has been moved so far now. And people like these lawyers, they're just trying to put it back to at least start in the direction where it should be. Justice Marina Paperny wrote a dissenting opinion. She essentially argued Section 88.1 isn't a charter issue because there is no constitutional right to drive. But even that pretense, like these fucking people that listen to this bullshit, that bullshit pretense, and I've heard that even said during my case, driving is a privilege. Oh, really? Well, if it's a privilege, then how the fuck am I forced to pay for the roads? How am I forced to pay for all the, the government licensing and the Ministry of Transportation or the DMV? Well, not Canada, it's not called DMV, or on the East Coast, Service New Brunswick, or all these. You force me to pay for all this underlying infrastructure and stuff, and even if you forget about that, they try to use the driving thing, but you know what? Just like, let's go back to the days when we had horses. Do you think anyone once said you don't have the right to travel into town? Right? Even if you were charged for some crime, you don't have a right to travel into town to get your groceries or your sugar or whatever. Everyone has the right to travel. That is actually one of the rights that we all have. Now, just because the government has created some Ponzi scheme where they get to fucking collect fees for those of us and create, like I said, some central planning Ponzi scheme where everyone has to pay a central planner to be able to do what we're supposed to be able to do, right? Now, I'm all for, like, if we want to have ability, like to have licenses so that there's ways to hold people so that, yeah, you have to have certain standards, right? That's fine. But there should be no pretense in, especially look at around you. Whether it's the public transportation system, right? Or all the vehicles that are traveling. Privilege to drive? Look out here. Who doesn't fucking drive? Everybody fucking drives, right? Or everybody has the right to drive, to travel, to work freely. Like, perfect example, like myself, that lives in a place in New Brunswick, central portion of New Brunswick, that has no public infrastructure, right? And they tried to put this excuse presented towards even me in my case. It's like, wait a minute, I live in a fucking place where there is no public transportation. So the only way I can get to my job to be gainfully employed is to drive. So I can only be employed if I can drive. So, but government gets to somehow decide whether I can have a job or not. Because that's basically what they're trying to put forth and present as a narrative, which is obviously completely fictional bullshit. They're just trying to speak legalese, right? They're trying to trick you or the general population, and many of them are very seemingly subservient to the ruling class, to the point where it's, hey, if that's what they say, that must be the rules, right? No, fuck's sake, no. Push back against this goddamn nonsense. Even though the law has been declared unconstitutional, it will, listen to this, yeah. This is really important. Listen to this. This is the fucking crazy part of central planning governments, right? Even though the law has been declared unconstitutional, it will remain in place for 1 year to give the government time to change it or ask for the issue to be heard by the Supreme Court of Canada. Which either way, if you're going to follow through with the logic, it's going to be thrown out eventually. But they figured, hey, it's another whole year, right? Bureaucracy, man. A fucking whole year of still criminalizing, punishing, penalizing people, destroying lives on a regular basis. Under what pretense, right? Right? I don't know. You have to ask them for that bullshit. Alberta Justice Minister Kathleen Gainley said in a written statement Thursday afternoon that roadside suspensions will remain in force for the time being, and police will still be able to issue them to drivers who are charged with impaired driving offenses over the next year. Gainley said her department will be looking at all the legal avenues available. The government has until mid-August to decide if it will ask the Supreme Court to hear the case. The Court of Appeal justices were told approximately 1 in 5 accused of impaired drivers are cleared of any wrongdoing. So that's 20%. But that's the thing. There are innocent people that are being, supposedly penalized and punished, but they're innocent. This is the thing with this collective and preemptive and mandatory minimum. These fucking bullshit. Let's just fuck everyone up and hope that sends a message. That's like, what a failing model. And like I said, yeah, we have to get as far away from that kind of concept of justice or legality. We have to move way, way far away from that and get back to the point of, like I said, no victim, no crime. The majority's decision found the license suspension practices goes against charter values because it assumes that every driver who is charged with an alcohol-related offense is or will be a danger. Right? Exactly. I was never a danger. I've never caused any harm to anyone. Pat myself on the back, right? I'm an excellent driver. And it's not just driving cars or trucks or tractor trailers, which I've done for multiple years. Over 1 million miles, no accidents, no cause of harm or injury to anybody ever. And not even in my personal vehicle or when I'm out in my four-wheeler, maybe out on a trail whipping 70, 80 miles an hour doing a wheelie, right? Never done all that stuff, all the years I've been alive, all the things I've done. And I've done a lot of stuff that people might consider, oh, that's dangerous, but never caused any harm to nobody. But because there are people that are incompetent, all because of these people who are incompetent, we're going to punish Bennett too. Why? Where's the point of me being fucking better or try to raise and elevate my standards to be better than the rest of everyone else if you're just going to fucking force me to race down to the bottom and charge me and penalize and criminalize me as if I was one of those people? Like I said, the race to the bottom, it doesn't benefit anyone. Even those at the bottom don't benefit from that race to the bottom. Because it just means they're smothered and suffocated from all the people that's piling on top of them. Right? The fact that 80% of those charged with alcohol-related offenses are found guilty does not detract from the fact that the rights of the other 20% of those charged are significantly impacted by the system, Slater wrote. Edmonton criminal lawyer Nate Whitling represents the appellants. Whitling successfully argued that under the current system, a person who is accused of impaired driving will have less suspended driving time if he or she pleads guilty without going to trial compared to those who plead not guilty and go to trial. The difference could be about 7 months. So this is even another pretense of you're suspended even until you go to court. So depending on how long it takes for you to go to court, like I said, oh man, these preemptive and collective punishments, it's so destructive. And I know, like I say, because I don't know anyone. And comment in this video below and tell me, anyone, do you know anyone in your family or your neighbor or your co-workers? I think every Canadian knows someone that's been wrongfully punished and convicted when there was no actual victim involved for this pretense of impaired driving. And it was the Mothers Against Drunk Driving that kept pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. These are very authoritarian people, right? Very authoritarians. Maybe some of them had people that they had lost loved ones, right? So they were lobbying government, right? But a person that has lost a loved one, and I mean, I feel terrible for someone as such, right? And I've someone that I lost my dad when I was a teenager. My son lost his girlfriend as a teenager. But none of us would ever present or put forth anything that's use my emotions, right? Use the sorrow of my case or my story as a pretense to criminalize and punish other people. I would never want that to ever come to fruition or to happen. Even though I had to suffer a lot of pain, even though my son, we suffered a lot of pain, but I would never, and he would never, and he said as much. I don't want to criminalize or punish someone just because there was an accident or something that might have been, and these weren't alcohol related, right? Not my dad, not my son. My son's girlfriend, it was a snowstorm. But like I said, if we had been devious or underhanded or all about trying to get money or use central planning governments as a means to an end, or lawyers and their devious habits and behaviors, yeah, we could have done that to punish or criminalize the people that caused harm or death, right? Recognize that shit happens, life happens, accidents happen. Think about what was the underlying pretense. You know, if the person had malice or ill intent, or like I said, if they were completely fucking, but that's the thing, each case, let the facts of each case be presented and put forth to a judge in a court of law and decide based solely on those. Forget the collective and mysticism of central planning governments and mandatory minimums or these fucking stupid arbitrary laws or rule by edict. Let a judge get back to doing their job, which is to decide and disseminate the information that's presented for them and come to a logical and lawful decision that will benefit all parties involved, right? So even the so-called criminal, just throwing them and locking them up, you're actually, if you just throw them in jail and lock them up, you're actually causing more, I mean, you're causing them hard, but you're causing the populace to have to pony up the money to pay. So the best thing we can do is try to help educate and inform, use technologies, right? Use messaging, right? These are the ways that we can help educate and inform each other. But using preemptive or collective punishments, and this is what this is really coming down to today, and that's why this decision has been overturned, because we're seeing the writing is on the wall. Is this race to the bottom? It's, yeah, like I said, well, there's only, the end result is everyone down at the bottom. Even these judges, even with the dissenter, this lady dissenter, the rest of the judges, the other two judges are saying, nope, we're going to show the courage and conviction and do the right thing. Even though there will be some political backlash, the propagandists, you know, these mad, you know, they will probably have all kinds of lobbying efforts to try to paint these judges as, oh, why would you do such a thing? Although I don't even know if they're going to have that much gumption anymore, because like I say, maybe they're starting to even see the writing on the wall. I don't know. I can't pretend to know what's going on in their mind, but I can tell you that the Canadian people, whether they agree on impaired driving and all this stuff, but the Canadian people are probably pretty much on board nowadays with, yeah, let's stop criminalizing and punishing people needlessly. Can we at least, you know, get back to the basics where there has to be a victim for there to be a crime? That's, and I mean, that will go a long way to benefit not just people socially, but even economically. I guarantee there are a lot of people in this country that are salivating or chomping at the bit to get their lives back in order and straightened out, but because they've been criminalized and punished and penalized to the point and painted into a corner of, I mean, stereotype of a drunk driver, right? The stereotype of a drunk driver, I mean, that's almost as bad in the modern day as the way it's been painted by these political propagandists, as it puts you in line with a pedophile. But it's time to start to unwind this fucking mystical way of thinking, right? And collectivism, where you're trying to paint people into groups and try to turn the rest of society against them. Let's deal with the individuals. Fuck the groups. Let's deal with each other as individuals. It's a much better way, and it's the most simplest way. It's the most logically consistent, just way, right? Even as far as law or personal or social justice, let's deal with each other as individuals, right? Based on our individual attributes, what we've done, and as far as drinking and driving, the facts of the case. So I'll post a link to this article in this video. And like I say, I'm just very thankful that today I can report to you that there's finally being some pushback against this. Hopefully it will help embolden others to stand up. I know it has for me. Like I say, if I had some money, or if someone would want to throw some money my way, I don't even want it for myself. But if anyone out there is watching this video, I'd gladly use my case. And I'll tell you, I got a wicked case. I've got all my paperwork still. I'd gladly take it to the Supreme Court, because I've already had to suffer the punishment and the penalties of my past conviction. But if I could help other Canadians or successive generations, because like I say, I've got a perfect case to be able to challenge in the Supreme Court. And I guarantee, if they're any moral or have any semblance of justice enshrined and instilled in them, it's easily winnable. And I would take on and assume that task, that role of shine the spotlight on myself if need be. I just don't have the money to be able to do so, or the time, because with the time means I can't work, and I have to be able to provide, for myself, the roof over my head. Me and my wife, we have to be able to take care of business. There's no other way for me to pretend otherwise. It has to be done. I can't try to do up too many things at once without realizing that if I destroy my own life, I'm not no help to anyone else. So I got to take care of myself first. First and foremost, I have to come first. And right now in this stage of my life, I have to do that. Unfortunately, because I've been placed in this position, 6-7 years ago, before all this shit happened to me, I could have been in a better position to help others. But unfortunately, at this stage of the game now, I'm not. I need to worry about taking care of myself before I can help others. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.